Hello and welcome to Good Conversations. My name is Thompson Smith. We're honored to have with us today State Senator Carol Juneau, who represents District 8 in the Montana Legislature, which runs all the way from the Sweetgrass Hills down to Arlee and encompasses all of the Blackfeet Reservation and most of the Flathead Reservation. Before that, State Senator Juneau was the representative in the House for District 16 for 4 terms until she was term limited, and then the popular candidate was elected to the Senate. She's also the chair of the Montana Indian Education Association, a statewide nonprofit that's been around for 25 years advocating for Indian education at all levels of the educational system. Senator Juneau, we're welcome
Thank you
to
very
our
much.
show. We're
Great.
Honored to have you here.
It's nice to be here.
The first question I wanted to ask you was just a little bit about how you got into politics and what inspired you.
You know, I think that question's been asked a number of times, and you try to figure out what it is that might have led me to this what I'm doing now. And I think I've always advocated for Indian people to be involved in the political system. I worked many elections on get out the vote, registering voters, doing various things like that. And in 1998, the candidate for the representative position in Browning resigned from his candidacy, and there it was open. So, and I thought, well, I need to, we got an opportunity here to take advantage of, to, step up and try to put in play some of my ideas and some of my concerns, I guess, be able to express them, and so ran and was elected as the representative in 1998. So
1998. Well,
so
that's wonderful, and we want to get right to some of those issues that are near and dear to your heart. But before that, I mean, there must have been some things that inspired you from your past. I mean, is there one influence most of all that?
You know, I'm not certain. I think one of the things I believe that Indian people have to be a part of the process. They have to be. What I used to say, you have to be at the table making the decisions instead of sitting in on, around the outside of the table. We need to, if we want change, if we want things to be better, we have to be where the decisions are made, not only for policy, but also where decisions are made for budget issues. As money, does provide support, for change and for activities, and at the state level. That's where things can happen. I've been involved also in education, I think, most of my life, and seen a lot of things that could be made better in terms of Indian education, and so that's always been a thing that drove me. I guess historically, if you think back of what might have been important to me, I think my family has always been a major part of my decisions. My father was an active member of the Tribal Council in Fort Berthold for many, many years. My sisters have been, big influences on me, and I think we've just always been a family that believes in, working hard for social change, working hard for justice, and so those types of things, And
I should have mentioned that you're enrolled with the 3 affiliated tribes of the Fort Berthold Reservation, Mandan, Hidatsa.
Mandan, Hidatsa, yes.
And you married Stan Juneau, who's enrolled at Browning.
Yes,
Wonderful.
I've been in Browning now since 1974. So a long time. Yeah.
Right. Well. One of the things that I wanted to visit with you about today is what's known as the S-word bill, House Bill 412, which was passed shortly after you arrived in the legislature, and I think you had a little something to do with it, didn't you?
That bill was, it wasn't new to me. It wasn't new to the legislature in 1999. And some other, the people had tried previously, I think the previous session or the session before, and were unsuccessful. And so in 1999, we made another attempt, and Carol Williams was also a member of the legislature at that time, and her and I, along with a number of other people, said, let's try this again in terms of Montana taking a stand on the issue that the word, the S word, the derogatory word of squaw does not belong on our place names in the state of Montana.
Okay, and that's what the bill mandated.
Absolutely. It said that in any place name in the state of Montana on that we would take action to change that word to another name. And the limits of that bill were that it would be like state land. And so we identified 76 sites in Montana that do contain or has that derogatory word on that. But the bill was surprisingly, we gathered a lot of support on that. We had some wonderful testimony from various people through Montana, Indians and non-Indians both, coming forth to help support that effort of Montana, that word no longer belongs in our vocabulary, and especially it doesn't belong on our beautiful mountains and water, lakes and creeks and stuff. So that was successful, and I appreciate that.
Right. So what's the process that it's set up? How do the names go about getting changed?
We've been working on this for 10 years. So we had 76 sites identified that needed change, and I had entered that activity or the process. We created a committee called the House Bill 412 Advisory Committee, and I thought, boy, this is going to be...
Isn't there another word in the title of that committee, volunteer?
It's absolutely. But I said, I thought it would happen fast, but I said, I learned pretty fast that I said you have to not only find a new place name for that, you have to get local support, which means whether it be people in that community, county commissioners in that community. Then you have to submit the name to a group called the Board of Geographic Names in Washington, D.C., who have final authority on approval of that. And so it is a real time-consuming process, and we've had a wonderful committee of people that have volunteered and have stuck with us in terms of working with communities, working with tribes, working with individuals that want to be, participate in that process. And
people don't realize that, they may see, I think some people may see a name change on a map eventually from the offensive S word to something else, and not really realize the tremendous amount of volunteer time that really made that happen.
Absolutely. That was one of the, and also one of the perhaps weaknesses of the bill was that there was no money designated, to help with travel perhaps for the committee to come to meetings. So all of the work of the committee over these years has been volunteer and supported by, whether it be themselves personally or, organizations that they might represent.
Right. I mean, as much time as it's taken, if it had been paid for, it would have consumed half the state's budget.
But it's been, I said, the first name change, which I'm always proud of, is that it was a school group, an after-school group in Helena, Montana, called the Waskana project, or a group of after-school activities for kids, particularly Indian kids in Helena schools, that worked on a gulch, S Gulch in Helena, and were the first names to be successfully changed.
That's
so that
fantastic.
was great. Yeah. So.
And I've been involved a bit with the culture committee. The elders there have submitted a number of names from the tribes here. How's that going?
There's, I believe, the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribe, the cultural committee, has been a significant part of this process. I think you identified around 25, 26 sites that are traditional sites of the Salish, and those were presented to the House Bill 412 Committee Advisory Committee and supported. And I understand, a number of them have been approved. Some have not. Some are still pending. But so we're waiting. That was the support of the Salish and Kootenai, Cultural Committee has been wonderful. In getting place names for removal and new names for that. So. And
so overall across the state, how many of these names are left?
What I figure, we've got 76 sites. There's a total of about, what I've got down is 65 that are either done. Some have been, most of them completed and approved by the Board of Geographic Names. Some are pending approval by that. So we're about 86% done. We've got about 10 sites yet in the state that need new names. And
for which none have been proposed yet?
No, not as far as where there's a name and it's gone forward. No, so 10 sites, a couple of up by Fort Belknap, and we're hoping that we can work with the Fort Belknap community to identify some names there. We've got a couple down by Northern Cheyenne that we're hoping that maybe the Northern Cheyenne tribe might take it, take action on. But we're hoping also that we can just, work with perhaps people in the local communities. And that's one of the key things. It wasn't the role of the House Bill, the advisory committee to just select new names for all of those sites. You actually had to try to identify names that local people, that would be acceptable in that local community, or that was a traditional, perhaps tribal name, or that some, perhaps a historic family in that community. So it wasn't, if it would have been up to us, if the advisory committee could have just said, yes, here's 76 new names, yeah, we would have been done. But I said, it's the process is what, of getting local support, gathering names that are important to that local community, and then submitting that name change. So we're, I think a long ways done, almost done, 10 more names or so. I'm hoping that probably within this next year that we should be able to finish.
Right. And if, as an Indian woman, if you had to explain to someone why this matters, what would you tell them?
That's interesting. I said, even with the state legislature in presenting this bill to the various committees, we got reaction from some of our colleagues that said, gee, I didn't know this was a derogatory word to call. We thought it meant woman or Indian woman. And no, it doesn't. It's a word that, I guess think of one of the worst things you could call a woman, I guess, or in describing somebody or a woman, and saying something mean, saying something derogatory, saying something dirty, that's what, the word means. And it would be, if somebody were to call me that word, I would be highly offended. And I'm sure, Indian women throughout Montana and the United States would also be highly offended by being called that.
And sometimes I hear people argue over the technicalities of its linguistic origin and stuff like that. But to me, it kind of misses the point, because what matters is how it's socially used. It's socially used in a derogatory way, the way the N-word was in the South.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it seems to me that's what matters.
Yeah, I think we know, I guess, and that was my answer to my colleagues. No, that it doesn't mean just that. If somebody uses that word to define an Indian woman, the Indian people view it as a derogatory term, and that you're not. It's very disrespectful, and
when it's on a place name, it's as if the state is expressing its acceptance of the use of such a term.
Absolutely, and to allow it to remain, and on our place names is, something that we, hopefully 10 names from now, they'll all be gone in the state.
Wow, how exciting. 10 names from now, so how much time do you think?
I think probably about a year. I would hope. If we can, we've got the sites identified, we know where they're at, we know who owns the land bases in each of those areas. Now it's just a matter of trying to connect with some people in those communities that would be willing to develop a place name for that.
And you mentioned the bureaucratic process with DC, the Board of Geographic Names. It takes a bit of time for that approval. And also, if there's opposition to any name, they generally don't act on it, right? Right.
They try to find out, why there's opposition, and they sometimes won't go. If the opposition is strong enough, they won't accept, the name that's gone forward, because the Board of Geographic Names operates under the process that it has to be locally accepted and locally supported, in that local community. So.
And there has been some opposition to some of the names submitted by the tribes.
There has been. I think there's 4 names right now that were submitted by the Salish Cultural Committee that were not approved, and an alternate name that was submitted by the Forest Service was the one that was selected by the Board of Geographic Names. So, and with the And there's another name.
It would seem to me that that's violating their principle, because obviously the Salish Culture Committee didn't agree with the name that they chose.
Yeah.
So,
and in one of their provisions, I think one of the provisions of the Board of Geographic Names is that they will, one of the requirements is that they check with tribal communities on any name change.
Yeah.
Say, that's proposed to them, that if there is a tribal, if it's on the reservation or if it's in the traditional area of that tribe, they're supposed to get input from that tribe.
Right.
Say if somebody submitted a site.
So your committee is looking into that now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's an area thing that we need to check on and see what the process is on that.
I see. Well, that's fascinating, and we're going to take a quick break now.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back to continue our conversation with State Senator Carol Juneau.
In February 2009, most television stations will convert to digital transmission and no longer provide analog service. Low-power translators and Class A stations are not required to cease analog broadcasts. For more information, call 275-4878. If you watch television on cable or satellite only, you need not do anything. If you watch free over-the-air TV, you may need a converter box if your TV set is not digital. Set-top converter box coupons worth $40 toward the purchase of these devices can be requested by calling 888-388-2009 or visiting www.dtv2009.gov. When purchasing a set-top box, be sure it has analog pass-through if you intend to watch analog and digital stations. These devices are listed on the dtv2009.gov website. Call 275-4878 if you need assistance or information.
And welcome back to Good Conversations. We're having a conversation today with State Senator Carol Juneau of Senate District 8, which runs all the way from the Sweetgrass Hills down to our Lee, encompassing all the Blackfeet Reservation and most of the Flathead Reservation. Welcome again, Carol. Thank you so much for being with us. In the first half hour, we talked a bit about the S-word bill, House Bill 412. And that same year, you were also involved in the passage of another bill of great importance to not only the Native communities of Montana, but to the whole state. Tell us about that one.
You know, I said, 1999 was really, I think, a significant session for Indian education. We were able to get what's called House Bill 528 passed and through the legislature and signed by the governor, and we now call it Indian Education for All. And House Bill 528, the intent of it was to express the legislative intent of the constitutional provision that Montana passed in 1972 in Article 10, subsection 2, Section 1, subsection 2, that expressed the that Montana will respect the cultural heritage and cultural integrity of American Indians in all its educational goals. And so it sat there since 1972.
Completely unfulfilled.
30-some years. You know, there it was, wonderful, beautiful language in the Constitution with good, I think, good intent on behalf of the delegates who, you know, voted for and passed, wrote the Constitution and passed it, but nothing done in the state of Montana in terms of implementing it. And so that was the intent of House Bill 528, and expressing. In brief statute, it's not a long statute. You know what we thought, and looking at the language of the Constitutional Convention, what we thought the delegates meant by putting that language in the Constitution. And so in 1999, we were successful in getting that passed. And again, then we celebrated and thought, wow, here we go, you know, we're going to get everything's going to start happening.
And that bill's the one now known as Indian Ed for All.
Yeah, the one we now call Indian Ed for All. And again, not too much happened then. From 1999, very little, and the main thing, no money. No money was appropriated. We'd ask for, you know, maybe like $50,000 or $60,000 at different times, and we're unsuccessful in getting money to implement.
50 or 60,000 for the entire state?
Wait, I mean, that was some of our requests, to say we need a little bit of money to get going on this, and so like in the 2001 session, 2003 session, you know, some attempts were made to try to put money in, and we weren't, it was denied. And so
on a strictly party line basis?
Pretty much, pretty much.
Democrats favored it, Republicans opposed it?
Yeah, pretty much. One of the things, and then a number of schools decided to take the state to court on the...
Okay, before you get to that, can I just ask, did the Republicans offer a reason for opposing it?
There were some that, you know, I mean, we have to remember in 1999, the bill was passed with Republican support.
Yeah.
You know, we had, you know, people that supported it, because we had a legislature that had, I believe, Republican control.
Yeah.
Our governor at that point was
Mark Roscoe?
Mark Roscoe, who signed off on the bill and supported the bill. I think, you know, money was tight in those years as well, and so adding money to budgets, adding money was difficult in any way. But I do think the putting money into our schools for Indian education just was difficult to gather that support from, you know, the parties, the majority party at that point, and. You know, a real lack of support for that. With some actually, so a few of them just actually not supporting, you know, the concept of providing.
That's what I was curious about.
Providing curriculum about American Indians in our schools. Just, you know, real. But
did they,
others, you know, others that supported it, you know, but didn't support the money.
And we still see some of that bubbling up in each session.
Absolutely.
This last
we're
session.
never, it's never been fully supported, you know, with a good vote. It's always had a strong vote, but not the landslide, I guess.
To me, that opposition confirms the dire need for Indian education.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, because a lot of it expresses the sense that Indian culture and history basically isn't important enough, or something isn't enough a part of the future to bother teaching in schools. It's
and just to think, you know, in Montana, there's 7 tribal nations,
right,
plus Little Shell. 8 really tribal nations, 7 reservation communities that have been here, you know, many of them forever. And for our school system, our public school system, not to include them. For all the kids. It's just, you know, for so many years.
For Indian and non-Indian kids.
For both, that's why it's called Indian Education for All. It's for, and so many, I think, that's one of the concepts of getting legislators to support it. It's not just for Indian kids. So often people think it's just for Indian education for Indian kids, and it's not. It's for every student, K-12, in our public school system, and impacts our university system as well. When they wrote the Constitution and they said, you know, this will be put in our educational goals, they didn't say, you know.
And it's interesting because that provision was put in the Constitution in '72, right after the height of the Civil Rights Movement. And I always remember one of Dr. King's messages was that racism is something that doesn't just oppress people of color. It oppresses everyone because it enmeshes everyone in this system of injustice.
I mean, can you imagine what Montana will be like, hopefully, in the next, you know, probably next couple of generations, when you have students that go through the school system now, once Indian Education for All is fully implemented, once they learn about their Indian neighbors, their history, their contributions, their challenges, you know, we'll have, I think, a generation of adults, you know, pretty soon, that are that will get along. The differences will not be there as much. Hopefully, the racism, which still exists,
of course.
And
but it's a long.
Will go away a little bit, you know, and stuff. So.
Yes, and it's going to require that steady funding, not breaking that chain over time. And that funding came about, you were beginning to explain, through these lawsuits. And tell us about those. We only have a few minutes left. So
the Montana Indian Education Association joined the school funding lawsuit in 2004 and was successful in getting some language out of the Sherlock decision on the school funding issue, as well as a Supreme Court decision on that affirmed Sherlock in 2005, I believe. But that the state was just completely at fault in not funding Indian education for all. And so
that was the Sherlock decision.
The Sherlock decision said the state is defenseless in its efforts in terms of implementing the constitutional language. And the Supreme Court decisions even went further and said, had some language about the constitutional provision for Indian education, and said, as demanded by the Article 10 Constitution provision for Indian ed. So as a result, I think, of the court language, the state legislature did take action in 2005 and 2007, and for the first time, you know, obligated some significant resources to begin implementing Indian education for all, developing curriculum, providing money to schools, providing, you know, finding resources, providing training for teachers, and but it continues to be, you know, an effort each session to make sure we continue that funding. It needs to be adequate, and it needs to be sustained. You know, you don't implement curriculum in our schools overnight, and you don't provide training to teachers, because the teachers need to know how to do this. All teachers, and it's not so. We need to continue to provide, you know, good, adequate resources for implementing Indian education for all in Montana schools and in our colleges.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thankfully, this bill's in place, and just to review now, the outcome now is basically that the funding is going through the Office of Public Instruction, and it's going out to tribal colleges on the different reservations in the state, and they're developing the curriculum.
That's a separate component or a separate funding stream.
And we just have 1 minute left.
Okay,
so
there was some money obligated in 2005 to tribal colleges so they could write their tribal histories, and that's a separate project from that. And so, and then that tribal history projects will go and be used for curriculum in our schools.
Okay.
So there was some money obligated in 2005 and a little more in 2007, the session to assist with that project.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being with us today. I'm sorry to say we're out of time. It goes so fast.
Yes, it does.
We hope to have you back soon.
Good.
We have a lot more to talk about.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you for being with us today. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, jokes, or anything else for our program, please email us at goodtalk@blackfoot.net. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.